Captain Lee Daehyun stared at the radar screen in disbelief. 36 massive ships had just dropped out of hyperspace near the mining colony of New Busan. The vessels were unlike anything he had ever seen before. They were huge, dark, and covered in what looked like weapons. "Sir, we're getting a transmission," said his communications officer, Lieutenant Park Min-ji. She was young but smart, and Daehyun trusted her judgment completely. "Put it through," Daehyun ordered. He commanded the patrol vessel Incheon's Pride, one of 12 ships protecting the outer colonies. His small fleet was no match for whatever had just arrived. The main screen flickered to life. A tall, blue-skinned alien appeared. It had 4 arms and eyes that glowed like fire. When it spoke, the translator made its voice sound cold and mechanical. "Primitive beings of this system, I am Admiral Kethvar of the Valorian Third Fleet. You will surrender immediately. Your species will serve the Valorian Empire. Resistance is futile." Daehyun looked around his bridge. His crew of 23 men and women stared back at him. These were good people, miners, engineers, farmers, who had left Earth to build a better life among the stars. They had families waiting for them back on New Busan. "Admiral Kethvar," Daehyun said calmly. "This is Captain Lee Daehyun of the Terran Colonial Defense. We don't want any trouble, but we won't surrender our people. Leave now and no one gets hurt." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your 12 tiny ships against my fleet? You cannot be serious." Dr. Park Min-ji was working frantically at her station. She had been studying the alien ships since they arrived. "Captain," she whispered, "their shields are strong, but they're using old energy patterns. Our mining lasers might actually hurt them." Daehyun nodded slightly. The mining colony used powerful lasers to cut through asteroid rock. The colonists had mounted some of these lasers on their ships for protection against space pirates. No one had ever thought they would face an alien invasion. "Admiral Kethvar," Daehyun said, "you have 10 minutes to leave our system." 10 minutes? The alien's eyes glowed brighter. "I will give you 10 seconds to surrender, or I will destroy every ship and every colony in this system." Daehyun cut the transmission. He opened a channel to all 12 ships in his patrol fleet. "All ships, this is Incheon's Pride. We're going to fight. Protect the colony at all costs. Use everything you have." Commander Kim Woo-jin, who led the strategic operations for the colonial defense, came on the radio from the surface. "Captain, we're evacuating the civilians to the underground shelters, but we have 5,000 people here. They need time." "You'll get it," Daehyun promised. The Valorian fleet moved forward. Their ships were massive compared to the human vessels. Each alien cruiser was 3 times the size of Daehyun's ship. They came in a perfect formation, like they had done this 1,000 times before. "All ships, attack pattern Delta," Daehyun ordered. It was a desperate plan. The human ships would split into 3 groups and attack from different directions. They would use their smaller size and speed to confuse the enemy. The first group of human ships charged straight at the center of the alien fleet. The Valorians fired their weapons. Bright blue energy beams cut through space. 2 human ships exploded immediately. But the attack was just a distraction. The second group of ships came from the left side. They had modified their mining lasers to maximum power. The beams cut into the alien shields like hot knives through butter. 3 Valorian ships took damage before they could turn to face the new threat. The third group came from behind. These ships carried the heaviest mining equipment. Instead of firing weapons, they rammed directly into the alien vessels. The first ship, commanded by Captain Song Min-ho, crashed into a Valorian cruiser's engine section. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire. "What are they doing?" Admiral Kethvar screamed on his bridge. "These tactics make no sense. Why are they destroying their own ships?" But the human plan was working. The Valorians were used to fighting enemies who valued their ships and lives above everything else. They had never faced an enemy willing to sacrifice everything to protect their families. Captain Lee Daehyun watched as more of his ships were destroyed, but they were taking Valorian ships with them. The mining lasers were cutting through alien armor. The ramming attacks were causing massive damage. "Sir," Lieutenant Park Min-ji called out, "the colony is almost evacuated. Commander Kim says they need 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes." Daehyun looked at his remaining ships. Only 6 were left, including his own. The Valorians still had 28 ships. But something had changed. The alien fleet was not advancing anymore. They were staying back, afraid of more ramming attacks. All ships pattern Gamma, Daehyun ordered. This was even more desperate. The remaining ships would use themselves as shields while the colony finished evacuating. The human ships spread out in a line between the aliens and the planet. They fired everything they had. Mining lasers, construction tools turned into weapons, even their emergency flares. It was not much, but it was enough to keep the Valorians cautious. Admiral Kethvar watched from his command ship. He had conquered 17 different species in his career, but he had never seen anything like this. These humans fought like they were insane. They destroyed their own ships without hesitation. They turned mining equipment into weapons. They refused to surrender even when facing impossible odds. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, "We have lost 8 ships. These humans are using weapons we do not understand. Their tactics are completely unpredictable." Kethvar stared at the human ships. They were small and weak, but they fought with a fury that frightened him. His own crew was getting nervous. Valorian warriors were brave, but they were not used to enemies who seemed to enjoy dying in battle. "Sir, the humans have stopped firing," the tactical officer said. On the planet below, Commander Kim Woo-jin's voice came over the radio. "Captain Daehyun, all civilians are safe. Underground shelters are sealed. Colony is secure." Daehyun smiled. His mission was complete. The people were safe. But he still had one more surprise for the aliens. "Admiral Kethvar," he broadcast on an open channel. "This is Captain Lee Daehyun. You wanted to see what humans can do when we're threatened. This was just the beginning. Leave now, or find out what we're really capable of." To make his point, Daehyun ordered his remaining ships to detonate their fusion reactors simultaneously. 6 small suns bloomed in space, taking out 5 more Valorian ships that were too close. Admiral Kethvar stared at the expanding fireballs where the human ships had been. These creatures had destroyed themselves just to prove a point. They had killed themselves to send a message. "Tactical retreat," he ordered quietly. "All ships withdraw to safe distance." His crew looked at him in shock. The Valorian Third Fleet was retreating from 12 primitive ships, but Kethvar knew something his crew did not understand yet. These humans were not primitive. They were something far more dangerous. From the underground shelters on New Busan, Commander Kim Woo-jin watched the alien fleet pull back. Dr. Park Min-ji had made it to the surface before the battle ended. She was analyzing the data they had collected on the Valorian ships. "Commander," she said, "I've been studying their technology. They're advanced, but they're also predictable. They fight like they're following a manual. Everything by the book." Kim Woo-jin nodded. "And we don't have a book. We make it up as we go." On his command ship, Admiral Kethvar was preparing his report to the Valorian High Command. How could he explain what had happened? How could he tell them that 12 small ships had forced his entire fleet to retreat? "Admiral," his communications officer said, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet." "From the humans?" Kethvar asked. "Yes, sir. It's from someone called Commander Kim Woo-jin." Kethvar hesitated, then nodded. "Put it through." Kim Woo-jin appeared on the screen. He was a young human male with serious eyes. "Admiral Kethvar, I have a message for your empire. What you fought today was one small patrol fleet protecting one small colony. We have over 200 colonies spread across 50 star systems. Each one is defended. Each one is ready to fight. Tell your empire that humanity does not surrender. Tell them we protect our own. And tell them that if they want a war, we'll give them one they'll never forget." The transmission ended. Admiral Kethvar sat in his command chair, thinking about what he had seen. The humans had fought with weapons that should not have worked. They had used tactics that made no strategic sense. They had sacrificed themselves without hesitation to protect their civilians. But the most frightening thing was what the human commander had said. This was just one small colony. How many more were out there? How many more humans were ready to fight like this? Kethvar began composing his report to the High Command. He would recommend sending a full sector fleet to deal with the human threat. Maybe 2 sector fleets. These creatures were more dangerous than they appeared. In the underground shelters of New Busan, the civilians were emerging to survey the damage. The space battle had been visible from the planet's surface. They had watched their defenders sacrifice themselves to keep the colony safe. Dr. Park Minji was collecting data from the wreckage in orbit. The pieces of Valorian ships would tell them much about their enemy's technology. But she had already learned the most important thing: the aliens. War Marshal Zeftal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. Around him, 2,400 Valorian warships prepared for the largest military operation in recent galactic history. The 5th Conquest Armada represented 15% of the Empire's total military might. It was enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. Marshal, his aide reported, all fleet groups are ready. We have confirmed positions on 17 human colonies across 12 star systems. Zeftal nodded. He was a veteran of 17 successful planetary conquests. The humans would learn what it meant to defy the Valorian Empire. Admiral Kethvar's humiliating defeat would be avenged. Begin the assault, he commanded. Start with their 3 largest colonies: New Seoul, Neo-Tokyo, and Prometheus Station. Show no mercy. Across human space, Admiral Choi Seonho was coordinating the defense from Terra Command. The graying military veteran had spent his entire life preparing for this moment. Humanity's first interstellar war. Sir, his aide reported, we're detecting massive Valorian fleet movements. At least 2,000 ships, possibly more. They're targeting our major population centers. Choi Seonho studied the tactical display. Red dots showed Valorian ships moving toward human colonies. The enemy had overwhelming numerical superiority. But numbers were not everything. Send word to all colonies, he ordered. Execute Defense Protocol 7. All civilians to prepared shelters. All militia units to battle stations. And activate the Ghost Corps. Colonel Yoon Jisoo received the activation signal while her unit was training in the asteroid fields near Prometheus Station. The Ghost Corps was humanity's most elite special forces unit. They specialized in unconventional warfare, the kind of fighting that regular armies could not handle. All units, this is Phoenix Leader, she broadcast to her scattered teams. The party has started, you know what to do. Yoon Jisoo's teams were different from normal soldiers. They had spent years learning to fight in space without large ships. They used small, fast vessels that could hide among asteroids and space debris. They struck without warning and disappeared before the enemy could respond. The first target was a Valorian supply convoy heading toward New Seoul. 60 transport ships protected by 20 escort vessels. It should have been safe passage through empty space. The attack came from nowhere. Small human ships appeared from behind asteroids and launched everything they had. But instead of trying to destroy the convoy, they targeted the escort ships, communication arrays and sensor equipment. What's happening? The Valorian convoy commander screamed as his screens went dark. Where are they? The Ghost Corps ships had already vanished back into the asteroid field, but they had left presents behind. Dozens of small mines attached to the transport ships' hulls. The mines would not explode immediately. They would wait, sending location data to other human forces. At Prometheus Station, engineer Bae Hyun-soo was making final adjustments to humanity's newest defensive technology, adaptive shield systems that could learn and counter enemy weapons in real time. Sir, his assistant called out, the Valorian fleet is 3 hours out, 200 ships heading straight for us. Bae Hyun-soo smiled grimly. Good. Time to see if our shields are as smart as we think they are. The Valorian assault on Prometheus Station began exactly as War Marshal Zeftal had planned. 200 heavy cruisers approached the human industrial complex in perfect formation. The station's defenses looked pathetic in comparison. A few orbital platforms and some civilian ships converted for military use. Begin bombardment, the Valorian fleet commander ordered. Destroy all defensive installations. The first wave of Valorian energy weapons struck the station's shields. The barriers flared bright blue and held. The second wave hit harder. The shields flickered but remained active. Sir, the Valorian tactical officer reported, their shields are adapting to Our weapon frequencies. Each shot is less effective than the last. Bae Hyunsu watched from the station's command center as his adaptive shields learned from each attack. The Valorian weapons used predictable energy patterns. The shields analyzed each shot and adjusted their harmonics to better resist the next one. Rotate shield frequencies every 30 seconds, he ordered. Let them think they're making progress, then surprise them. The battle for Prometheus Station lasted 18 hours. The Valorians threw everything they had at the human defenses, but the adaptive shields continued to evolve, becoming more resistant with each attack. Finally, the Valorian fleet commander made a desperate decision. All ships ramming speed will destroy the station with kinetic impact. But as the alien ships accelerated toward the station, Colonel Yoon Jisu's Ghost Corps struck again. They had been hiding in the wreckage of destroyed civilian ships, waiting for this moment. Small explosives attached to the Valorian ships' engines detonated simultaneously. 20 Valorian ships lost power and crashed into each other. The coordinated ramming attack became a chaotic collision that destroyed 60 more vessels. The surviving ships retreated in confusion. At New Sol Colony, the battle was even more brutal. The Valorians had brought their most powerful siege weapons, expecting to crush human resistance quickly. Instead, they found something they had never encountered before. Every human civilian was a potential soldier. Children as young as 12 operated anti-aircraft guns from concealed positions. Elderly citizens piloted makeshift bombers loaded with mining explosives. The entire population had turned their colony into a fortress. "Sir," a Valorian ground commander reported to his ship, "the humans won't stop fighting. We've taken the main city, but they keep attacking from underground tunnels. Even their children are armed." War Marshal Zeftal could not believe what he was hearing. Civilian populations were supposed to surrender when faced with superior force. They were supposed to beg for mercy. They were not supposed to fight like professional soldiers. "Use the nerve gas," he ordered. "Clear the tunnels." But when the Valorian troops entered the underground passages, they found them empty. The humans had abandoned their positions and moved to new ones. The tunnel system was far more extensive than the aliens had realized. General Na Yoonji commanded the defense of New Seoul from a hidden command bunker 3 kilometers underground. She had spent 5 years preparing the colony for siege warfare. Every building was connected to the tunnel system. Every street had hidden weapons caches. Every civilian knew their battle station. Phase 2, she ordered. Begin urban assault. Above ground, the Valorian occupation force suddenly found themselves under attack from all directions. Human fighters emerged from sewers, building basements and concealed bunkers. They struck fast and hard, then disappeared back underground. The roar. Valorians were experts at conventional warfare. They knew how to fight other armies in open space or on flat battlefields. But they had no experience with guerrilla tactics in urban environments. "Marshal," the ground commander reported, "we control the surface, but the humans control everything underneath. They appear, attack, and vanish. We can't predict where they'll strike next." Dr. O. Taman was coordinating the human defense from the research facility on Kepler 442b. He had developed the quantum communication network that allowed human forces to coordinate across vast distances instantly. "All units," he broadcast to human forces across 12 star systems, "begin Operation Hornet's Nest. Time to show them what we're really capable of." Across human space, the real counterattack began. The Ghost Corps had spent weeks placing tracking devices on Valorian supply ships. Now they knew the location of every enemy vessel in human territory. Small human strike teams hit Valorian ships throughout the night. They did not try to destroy the vessels. Instead, they sabotaged life support systems, navigation computers, and communication arrays. The alien ships became floating tombs, cutting off from their fleet and slowly dying in space. Colonel Yoon Ji-soo led the most daring raid personally. Her team infiltrated War Marshal Zeftal's flagship while it orbited New Seoul. They did not try to capture or kill the enemy commander. They had a different mission. They planted listening devices throughout the ship and hacked into the Valorian communication system. Now humanity could hear every enemy transmission, every order, every tactical discussion. "Marshal," Yoon Jisu's voice came over the ship's speakers. "This is Colonel Yoon Jisu of the Terran Ghost Corps. We've been listening to your conversations. We know your battle plans. We know your supply routes. We know your weaknesses. Sweet dreams." The transmission cut off, leaving the Valorian command staff staring at each other in shock. The humans had been inside their most secure vessel without being detected. War Marshal Zeftal realized that his invasion was failing. 8 months of fighting had cost him over 1,600 ships. The humans showed no sign of surrendering. If anything, they were becoming more aggressive as the war continued. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "we've intercepted human communications. They're calling this the training war. They say they're using our invasion to test their military systems." Training war? Zeftal could not understand what that meant. The humans were fighting for their lives. How could they treat it as training? At Terra Command, Admiral Choi Seonho was reviewing battle reports from across human space. The defensive campaign was proceeding exactly as planned. The Valorians were being worn. Grand Admiral Morthak the Destroyer stood on the command deck of his massive dreadnought, the Galaxy's End. Around him, nearly 10,000 Valorian warships assembled in the largest military formation in the Empire's history. 3 full annihilation fleets representing 60% of Valorian military power, prepared to crush humanity once and for all. Admiral, his strategic coordinator, reported, "All fleet groups are in position. We have planet crackers, atmospheric poisoners, and star killer missiles. The humans will face complete extermination." Morthak nodded grimly. He had earned his reputation by destroying entire civilizations that refused to surrender. The humans would learn what true fear meant. War Marshal Zeftal's failure would be avenged with overwhelming force. "No prisoners," he commanded. "No enslaved populations. Total sterilization of all human worlds. We will erase this species from the galaxy." On Terra Prime, President Kang Min-seok stood in the emergency command center deep beneath the planet's capital city. The former military strategist knew this moment would come. The Valorians would eventually commit everything to destroying humanity. "Mr. President," General Na Yoonji reported, "Valorian fleets are massing in 7 different staging areas. Intelligence estimates between 9 and 10,000 ships. They're bringing world-killer weapons." Kang Min-seok studied the tactical display showing red dots throughout human space. The enemy had enough firepower to sterilize every human world simultaneously. But humanity had been preparing for exactly this scenario. "Activate Protocol Omega," he ordered quietly. "All hidden facilities, all reserve forces, all secret weapons. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity is truly capable of." Across human space, the real war machine began to awaken. What the Valorians had seen so far was just the public face of human military power. The truth was far more impressive and terrifying. Dr. O'Taman coordinated the activation from his hidden facility in the Centauri system. For 3 years, humanity had been building weapons and ships in locations the Valorians could never have imagined. Underwater factories on ocean worlds, underground shipyards and asteroid mining stations, hidden construction facilities in the empty space between star systems. "All stations report ready," he announced to President Kang Min-seok. "Project Deep Storage is fully operational. We have 1,500 hidden production facilities coming online simultaneously." The Valorian assault began with Grand Admiral Morthak's favorite tactic: overwhelming shock and terror. His planet cracker missiles targeted Terra Prime, Nu, Sol, and 12 other major human worlds simultaneously. The weapons were designed to split planets apart from the core outward, but when the missiles reached their targets, something impossible happened. They simply disappeared. "Admiral," his weapons officer reported in confusion, "the planet crackers have been intercepted. Some kind of energy barrier is destroying them before impact." General Na Yoonji watched from Terra Prime's command center as Bai Hyunsu's newest defensive system proved itself: planetary shield generators that could vaporize incoming missiles with focused energy beams. The technology was based on lessons learned from the adaptive shields used at Prometheus Station. "Sir," her tactical officer reported, "all major worlds are secure. The planetary shields are holding against everything they're throwing at us. But the real surprise came when the human counterattack began. Ships emerged from hidden bases throughout human space, not the converted civilian vessels the Valorians had been fighting, but purpose-built warships designed specifically for military combat. Admiral Shin Ji-won commanded the first wave of humanity's true fleet. Her ships appeared from concealed positions, in asteroid fields, nebulae, and empty space between star systems. The Valorians suddenly found themselves facing an enemy they had never seen before. "All ships," she broadcast, "begin Operation Retribution. Show them what happens when you threaten human families." The new human ships moved unlike anything the Valorians had encountered. They were fast, heavily armed, and equipped with Bai Hyunsu's adaptive technology. Their shields learned from enemy attacks within seconds. Their weapons adjusted frequency and power automatically to penetrate Valorian defenses. Marshal Yang Dong-hyuk led the Deep Space Reconnaissance Force in a series of strikes that devastated Valorian supply lines. His ships had been watching enemy movements for months, learning their patterns and weaknesses. "Target their command vessels," he ordered. "Take out their fleet coordination first." Yang Dong-hyuk's forces used tactics the Valorians could not understand. They appeared from impossible angles, struck with precision at critical systems, and vanished before the enemy could respond. It was like fighting ghosts that could predict every move. Grand Admiral Morthak watched his carefully planned assault dissolve into chaos. Human ships were appearing everywhere, using weapons and tactics his strategists had never encountered. The enemy seemed to know exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "the humans have been intercepting our communications for months. They know our battle plans, our supply routes, our ship movements. They've been preparing specifically for this attack." Director Lim Soo-young of the Strategic Deception Division smiled as she watched Valorian fleets struggle against carefully laid traps. Her teams had spent 2 years feeding false information to enemy intelligence while learning everything about Valorian military doctrine. "Phase 3, she announced to her scattered operatives. "Begin the Revelation Protocol. Time to show them how thoroughly they've been deceived." Across the battlefield, human forces revealed the true scope of their deception. The colonies the Valorians thought they had destroyed were empty shells. The real populations had been evacuated to hidden worlds months before the invasion began. The desperate defenses the humans had mounted were carefully designed training exercises. Every battle had been planned to test specific weapons and tactics against live enemies. The Valorians had unknowingly served as test subjects for humanity's military development. President Kang Min-suk addressed the Valorian High Command directly via intercepted communication channels. His image appeared on screens throughout the VI enemy fleet, calm and confident. "Honorable members of the Valorian Empire," he said, "you have been fighting the Terra Colonial Defense Force, our local militia. They represent approximately 30% of human military capability. You are about to meet the Terran Republic Defense Forces, our actual military." The transmission cut off, leaving Grand Admiral Morthak staring at a blank screen. 30%? The humans had been holding back 70% of their forces? Admiral Park Jin-woo's reserve armada emerged from hiding like a rising tide of death. 15,000 ships of advanced design equipped with weapons the Valorians had never seen. They moved in perfect coordination, as if controlled by a single mind. "All units," Park Jin-woo broadcast, "begin total war protocols. No Valorian ship leaves human space." The reserve armada's ships were marvels of human engineering. They used quantum-entangled communication systems that made jamming impossible. Their weapons could adjust power and frequency faster than enemy shields could adapt. Their armor was designed to actually become stronger when damaged. General Hong Yuna commanded the ground forces that landed on Valorian ships disabled by the fleet action. But instead of slaughtering the enemy crews, she did something unprecedented in galactic warfare. "Attention Valorian personnel," she broadcast to captured ships. "We are providing medical assistance to your wounded and repair crews for your damaged vessels. Surrender peacefully and you will be treated according to the Sati, Terran conventions on warfare." The Valorian soldiers who surrendered found themselves in a situation none of them could understand. The humans provided food, medical care, and comfortable quarters. They asked questions about Valorian culture and technology, but they did not torture or execute prisoners. "Why are you helping us?" a wounded Valorian officer asked General Hong Yuna. "We came to destroy your species." Hong Yuna smiled sadly. "Because that's what humans do. We fight when we have to, but we don't enjoy killing. We'd rather turn enemies into friends." The battle for human space raged for 18 months, but it was not the desperate struggle the Valorians had expected. Instead, it was a systematic demonstration of human military superiority. Dr. O. Tamen's quantum communication network allowed perfect coordination between human forces across hundreds of light years. Every ship, every soldier, every defensive installation operated as part of a single massive organism. The Valorians found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to read their minds. Human forces anticipated every attack, countered every strategy, and struck at weak points the aliens did not even know they had. Grand Admiral Morthak's mighty armada was reduced to fewer than 3,200 operational ships. His planet crackers had been neutralized. His elite assault troops had been captured and were being treated better than they treated their own wounded. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet commander." Admiral Park Jin-woo's image appeared on the main screen. He looked tired but determined. "Grand Admiral Morthak, this is Admiral Park Jin-woo of the Terran Republic Defense Forces. Your invasion has failed. Your ships are surrounded. Your crews are dying. Surrender now and we will—" Emperor Kalthavan of the Valorian Empire sat in his golden throne room, reading Grand Admiral Morthak's battle report for the third time. The words seemed impossible to believe. The Empire's greatest military force, 60% of their total fleet strength, had been defeated by a species that appeared to treat warfare as entertainment. "Counselor Vextar," he called to his chief military advisor, "explain to me how this is possible. How can creatures who have barely achieved interstellar travel defeat our greatest armada?" Counselor Vextar shifted nervously. The old warrior had served the Empire for 40 years, but he had never seen anything like the reports coming from human space. "Your Majesty, our intelligence division has been analyzing intercepted human communications. The truth is worse than we feared." The Emperor gestured for him to continue. "The forces that defeated Grand Admiral Morthak represent less than 30% of human military capability. What we fought was their colonial defense force and local militia. Their actual military has not yet engaged. In the depths of space, far from any star system, Admiral Shin Jiwon commanded the human reserve armada from her flagship, the Terra's Wrath. Around her, 15,000 ships waited in perfect formation. These vessels had been built in secret over the past 5 years, hidden in locations the Valorians could never have imagined. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "we're receiving new intelligence from the Deep Space Reconnaissance Division. The Valorians have discovered our deception network." Shin Jiwon smiled coldly. Marshal Yang Donghyuk's spy ships had been observing Valorian space for over a decade. Humanity knew the location of every major enemy world, military base, and resource facility. They had detailed maps of Valorian territory that were more accurate than what the Empire's own military possessed. "Good," she said. "Time to show them what we've really been doing all these years." Marshal Yang Donghyuk's reconnaissance forces had been humanity's eyes and ears throughout the galaxy. His stealth ships, invisible to Valorian sensors, had studied every aspect of the Empire's military, political, and economic structure. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported from the hidden base in the void between stars, "the Valorians have finally realized that Earth is not humanity's homeworld. They're beginning to understand the scope of our deception." Yang Donghyuk nodded. Director Lim Soo-young's disinformation campaign had been masterful. For 3 years, she had convinced the Valorians that Earth was humanity's primary world and main population center. In reality, Earth was just one of over 200 major human colonies, and not even among the top 10 in terms of industrial capacity. "Phase 4, he ordered. "Begin the revelation protocol. Let them see what humanity really looks like." Director Lim Soo-young sat in her command center on the hidden world of New Geneva, monitoring Valorian communications as her carefully planned deception unraveled. The enemy was finally beginning to understand how thoroughly they had been manipulated. "Sir," her communications specialist reported, "we're detecting panic transmissions throughout Valorian space. They've discovered our observation posts in their territory. They know we've been watching them for years." Lim Su-Yung had spent 5 years building the most sophisticated intelligence network in galactic history. Human operatives and automated spy systems monitored every aspect of Valorian society. They knew the Empire's military secrets, political weaknesses, and economic vulnerabilities. But the most shocking revelation was still to come. Emperor Kalthven received the report from his intelligence division with growing horror. Human spy ships had been operating in Valorian space for over a decade. They had observed military exercises, recorded classified communications, and mapped strategic installations. "Your Majesty," Intelligence Director Morkoth reported, "the humans have been preparing for this war since before first contact. They knew about our empire years before Admiral Kethvar encountered their patrol fleet." The Emperor stood up from his throne, pacing to the great window that showed the capital city of Valorius Prime. "Are you telling me that their first contact was staged? That they allowed Admiral Kethvar to find them?" "Yes, Your Majesty. Our analysts believe the humans wanted us to attack them. They used our invasion as a training exercise to test their military systems against a real enemy." On Terra Prime, President Kang Min-seok held an emergency session with the Terran High Council. The time for deception was over. Humanity was about to reveal its true nature to the galaxy. "Counselors," he addressed the assembled leaders of human space. "The Valorians now know they have been fighting less than 1/3 of our military forces. It's time to show them what humanity looks like when we're actually trying." Fleet Admiral Park Jin-woo received his new orders via quantum encrypted transmission. The reserve armada would emerge from hiding and demonstrate why humanity had become the dominant species in their region of the galaxy. "All ships," he broadcast to his massive fleet. "Operation Final Lesson begins now. Show the galaxy what happens when you threaten human civilians." But as the reserve armada prepared to reveal itself, something even more shocking was happening throughout human space. Civilian news broadcasts were discussing the war with casual interest, as if it were a sporting event rather than a fight for survival. Valorian intelligence operatives intercepted human media transmissions with growing disbelief. News anchors discussed battle tactics like game strategies. Civilian commentators critiqued military performance as if watching entertainment. Children played games based on the battles they had witnessed. "Breaking news," a human reporter announced. "The Valorian Empire has committed 60% of their total fleet strength to the invasion of human space. Military analysts expect this phase of the conflict to last approximately 6 more months, before Valorian forces are forced to retreat." The reporter spoke as if the outcome was already decided. There was no fear, no uncertainty, just confident analysis of how the war would proceed. Emperor Kalthven watched these transmissions in his private chamber, struggling to understand what he was seeing. How could a species under existential threat discuss their situation so calmly? "Counselor Vextar," he called his military advisor, "explain to me why the humans are not afraid." The old warrior's response chilled the Emperor to his core. "Your Majesty, our psychologists believe the humans are not afraid because they never considered this a real threat. To them, our invasion is an interesting challenge, not a fight for survival." In the hidden research facilities of New Cambridge, Dr. O. Taman was coordinating humanity's true scientific achievements. The technology the Valorians had encountered was just the beginning. Human science had advanced far beyond what they had revealed. "Sir," his research assistant reported, "the quantum fold communication network is ready for galaxy-wide activation. We can now coordinate military operations across thousands of light years in real time." Otaman nodded. Humanity's technological advantages went far beyond better weapons and shields. They had developed communication and coordination systems that allowed their entire species to function as a single organism when necessary. But the most disturbing revelation came from intercepted human educational broadcasts. Children in schools, were learning about the war as part of their history lessons, even though it was still ongoing. Today we'll study the Valorian conflict, a human teacher explained to her class of 10-year-olds. This represents humanity's first major interstellar war and demonstrates several key principles of asymmetric warfare and psychological operations. The children listened attentively, taking notes on military tactics and strategic deception. To them, the war was already history, a teaching tool to help them understand how their species dealt with external threats. General Hong Yuna was processing Valorian prisoners of war when she made a discovery that changed everything. The captured, enemy soldiers were not the fanatical warriors she had expected. They were frightened, confused beings who had been told they were fighting primitive savages. "Colonel," she reported to her superior, "the Valorian military structure is based on rigid hierarchy and unquestioning obedience. Their soldiers have never faced an enemy that thinks independently. They literally don't know how to fight against opponents who adapt and improvise." This explained why human tactics had been so effective. The Valorians were excellent at following battle plans, but they could not adjust when those plans failed. Humans, on the other hand, had built their entire military doctrine around flexibility and adaptation. Ambassador No Seungmin received his instructions from President Kang Min-seok as Valorian resistance began to collapse throughout their empire. His mission was to negotiate not just an end to the war, but the foundation of a new galactic order. "Ambassador," the president said, "the Valorians are about to learn that humanity has been in contact with 47 other spacefaring species. All of them have been too afraid of the Valorian Empire to reveal themselves. With the Empire neutralized, it's time to build something better." As the truth spread throughout Valorian space, panic began to set in. Not just military panic, but existential terror at the realization of what they had awakened. Humanity was not just another spacefaring species. They were something entirely new in galactic history, a species that treated warfare as problem-solving, diplomacy as President Kang Min-seok stood before the assembled representatives of 63 different species in the Great Hall of Terra Nova Station. The massive space facility had been built in just 6 months, a testament to humanity's industrial capabilities. Today would mark the beginning of a new chapter in galactic history. "Fellow citizens of the galaxy," he began, his words translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. "We gather today not as conquerors and conquered, but as partners in building a better future for all sentient life." Fleet Admiral Park Jin-woo watched from the military section as former enemies sat side by side with species that had hidden from the Valorian Empire for centuries. The Kalari, who had spent 50 years hiding in the galactic rim. The Genthi, collective, whose peaceful merchant fleets had been driven underground by Valorian aggression. The mysterious Vorthan, whose advanced technology had been kept secret for fear of Valorian theft. "Admiral," his aide whispered, "the integration of former Valorian military units is proceeding ahead of schedule. General Hong Yuna reports that 3,000 enemy officers have volunteered for joint training programs." Park Jin-woo nodded. General Hong Yuna's occupation forces had accomplished something unprecedented in galactic history. Instead of ruling through fear and oppression, they had improved conditions for Valorian civilians while retaining former enemy military personnel as partners rather than prisoners. Emperor Kalthvin, now bearing the ceremonial title of Cultural Advisor for Valorian Integration, sat in the front row of the assembly. 6 months ago he had commanded the largest empire in known space. Today he watched his former subjects working alongside their former enemies to build something better than either had imagined possible. "Your Majesty," Ambassador No Seungmin said quietly, taking the seat beside him, "the reconstruction of Valorius Prime is ahead of schedule. Human engineering teams have restored full infrastructure, and your people report higher satisfaction ratings than they had under the old system." Kalthvin still struggled to understand how this was possible. Humanity had defeated his empire completely, yet instead of enslaving or destroying his people, they had made their lives better. Valorian workers now had shorter hours, better pay, and access to medical care that surpassed anything the empire had provided. "Ambassador," he said, "why? Why help those who tried to destroy you?" No Seungmin smiled. Because that's what humans do. We solve problems. Your people were suffering under an oppressive system that forced them to attack others. We fixed the system. In the research facilities of New Geneva, Dr. O. Taemin was coordinating the most ambitious project in galactic history. The Galactic communication network would connect every inhabited world in real time, allowing instant coordination and cooperation across thousands of light years. Sir, his assistant reported, the Vorthen have agreed to share their quantum-fold technology. Combined with our communication systems, we'll be able to link the entire galaxy within 2 years. O. Taemin marveled at how quickly everything was changing. 6 months ago, most galactic species had lived in isolation, afraid to reveal themselves. Now they were working together on projects that would benefit everyone. But the most remarkable changes were happening on individual worlds throughout former Valorian space. General Hong Yuna toured the rebuilt capital city of Valorius Prime, accompanied by her Valorian counterpart, General Kethmore. The former enemy commander had become one of humanity's most effective partners in the reconstruction effort. General Hong, Kethmore said, as they watched human and Valorian children playing together in a newly constructed park. My people are calling this the peaceful conquest. They joke that humans invaded us with kindness instead of weapons. Hong Yuna laughed. We prefer to think of it as aggressive friendship, much more effective than traditional warfare. The park they walked through had been built where the old imperial palace once stood. Instead of a monument to conquest, it was now a place where families from dozens of species could gather and play. Human engineering had created environmental zones suitable for different atmospheric requirements, allowing unprecedented interspecies interaction. General, Kethmore continued, I must ask you something that troubles many of my people. Why do you trust us? How do you know we won't betray you when we become strong enough? Hong Yuna stopped walking and looked at the former enemy officer seriously. General, humanity learned something important during our own history. The best way to prevent future conflicts is to make sure everyone benefits from peace. If your people are happy, prosperous, and free, why would they want to fight us? Marshal Yang Dongyuk's Deep Space Reconnaissance Force had been reassigned to exploration rather than military intelligence. His ships, which had once spied on enemy fleets, now searched for new species to invite into the growing galactic community. Sir, his navigation officer reported, we've detected artificial structures in the Kepler 891 system. Appears to be a civilization that's achieved early spaceflight but hasn't left their home system yet. Yang Donghyuk smiled. First contact. Protocols had changed dramatically since the Valorian conflict. Instead of waiting for new species to find them, humanity actively sought out developing civilizations to offer assistance and protection. Prepare the standard first contact package, he ordered. Medical technology, communication systems, and a formal invitation to join the galactic community. And make sure they understand we're here to help, not conquer. But the most significant changes were happening in human space itself. The war had revealed humanity's true capabilities, but it had also shown the galaxy what human society was really like. Director Lim Soo-young of the Strategic Deception Division found herself reassigned to the Department of Cultural Exchange. Her skills at understanding and manipulating other species were now used to help facilitate peaceful cooperation rather than military advantage. Ma'am, her assistant reported, the Kalari delegation is requesting assistance with their educational system. They want to implement human-style critical thinking programs for their children. Lim Soo-young nodded. This was the kind of challenge she enjoyed. How do you teach an entire species to think differently? How do you help them develop the flexibility and adaptability that had made humanity so successful? The answer, she had learned, was patience and genuine respect for other cultures. Humans didn't try to make other species become human. They helped them become better versions of themselves. Engineer Bei Hyunsu's adaptive technology had revolutionized more than just military defense. The same principles that allowed shields to learn from enemy attacks were now being used to create systems that adapted to the needs of different species. Sir, his research team reported, the atmospheric processors for New Genthy are working perfectly. The colony can now support 7 different species simultaneously, each with optimal environmental conditions. Bai Hyunsu watched the progress reports with satisfaction. Building weapons had been necessary during the war, but building homes for refugees and creating environments where different species could live together was far more rewarding. Colonel Yoon Jisu's Ghost Corps had also been transformed. Instead of conducting sabotage and reconnaissance against enemies, they now served as rapid response teams for humanitarian crises throughout the galaxy. "Colonel," her communication specialist reported, "we're receiving a distress call from the Outer Rim. Natural disaster on Kepler 1247. 7 different species need evacuation." Yoon Jisu's teams had become the galaxy's premier emergency response force. They could appear anywhere within hours, equipped to handle any crisis. The same skills that had made them terrifying to enemies now made them heroes to civilians in need. President Kang Min-seok concluded his address to the Galactic Assembly with words that would be remembered for centuries. "We stand at the beginning of a new age," he said. "An age where strength is measured not by the ability to destroy but by the capacity to build, where success is defined not by conquest but by cooperation, where the greatest warriors are those who fight to protect the innocent and help the weak become strong. Humanity offers you our hand in friendship, not as rulers, but as partners, not as conquerors, but as builders. Together we will create a galaxy where every species can reach its full potential, where every world can prosper, and where every child can grow up without fear." The assembly erupted in applause from dozens of different species. But the most meaningful moment came when Emperor Kalthavan stood and added his voice to the ovation. 6 months later, the transformation was complete. The Valorian Empire had become the Valorian Federation, a democratic society where former subjects now chose their own leaders. 47 species that had hidden in fear for decades now participated openly in galactic commerce and culture. The Treaty of Terra Nova established humanity as the protectors of galactic peace, but with strict limitations on their authority. They could intervene to prevent aggression or genocide, but they could not impose their will on peaceful societies. Ambassador No Seungmin had negotiated a framework that satisfied everyone. Humanity would provide military protection and technological assistance, but each species would govern itself according to its own values and traditions. The final scene of this new galactic order took place in a small park on Valorius Prime. Emperor Kalth